the ocean's a little bit like a market or a mountain on a mountain bike is, like the
you're
market.
out here for
you're out here,
you're out here just because.
The market, the ocean doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
The ocean's going to do what the ocean's going to do. And you have to work out how to interact with that within your risk tolerance. And, that's not a horrible, Rodney was right. That's not a horrible metaphor for trading. The idea of accepting the risk. So, you read the books about this and you think if I say to stop, I've accepted the risk. I can, so I guess the worst is you just don't even think about it.
Yep.
The next step is, measure it out and quantify it in some way, shape or form. Where I've made mistakes in this before, and where I think a lot of people get this wrong, is there is a massive difference between actually quantifying a risk and then actually accepting it.
Yes.
And so getting back to the sort of whether it's mountain biking, whether it's surfing, I think, or any sort of, sort of risky sport, there's something to that in terms of the idea of, I used to be, pretty competitive with my surfing and used to push myself pretty hard. But, there's, the ocean's a little bit like a market or a mountain on a mountain bike is, like the market.
You're out here you're out here just because.
The market, the ocean doesn't care about you. The ocean's going to do what the ocean's going to do. And you have to work out how to interact with that within your risk tolerance. And, that's not a horrible, Rodney was right. That's not a horrible metaphor for trading.
So then you started with him, and did you work under him, or how
he was the boss of the desk.
Oh, so he was the guy at the whole thing.
How
long were you there?
I was there, to the end actually. So 90, I was made the sort of half joke that if Bankers Trust still existed, I'd probably still work there. So from 93 to 96, at the end, Bankers Trust, obviously.
And then what was next?
I then went to Morgan Stanley for a few years. I was involved in the.
And this was in Australia?
No, this was so during Bankers Trust. I moved to London, so I started in Sydney, moved to London. Then actually went joined Morgan Stanley, spent a year in Singapore, then a couple of years here in New York.
Okay.
That was on the commodity side of things. And then I spent the next step was at that point I was 29-ish.
Yep.
Then I spent a few years at Tudor, which was sort of my jump to the.
Yep. So it's funny because I was reading about you. We know each other, but I don't know your entire story. So as I read your bio, I was like, oh, cool. He worked at Tudor. That's the place to work. Paul's a hero to everyone.
Paul's a great guy.
I used to joke he's the best billionaire I know. He's just the most decent person in markets I know, period.
I think so too.
So then I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Paul story? Because there's always a good one. That you could tell.
So I didn't, as a backstory, and this is 150,000% my own fault. I had a miserable time at Tudor. So
really?
I moved there when I was 29.
Yeah.
I'd gone from sort of, prop trader, market maker to moving to a sort of pure portfolio management job. And I thought that was the same thing. And it's just manifestly not. The analogy I always used to use when I had investors about this was it's like a guy who is a bus driver saying, what do I do for a job? I drive a machine that transports people. A plane is a machine that transports people. I guess I can fly a plane. Yeah. So it's a very different animal.
It's actually worse because you have higher confidence.
Right. Well, and I was that idiot. So I went there way too young. I didn't realize that I was making a transition. I just thought it'd be sort of keep doing what I was doing.
Was this in Sydney?
No, this is in Greenwich actually.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so what vintage was that?
So I was there from 2003 to 2006.
Okay.
So as I said, the worst 3 years of my life, and that's on me. That was not.
Yep.
So getting back to the I think I really only had maybe 3 interactions with Paul the entire time I was there. I think there might have been a hello.
Yep.
There's probably a goodbye, and then it's funny. I was actually you mentioned you're going to talk about this, so I was actually thinking about this. And I've told this story a bunch of times. Yeah. I'm not sure that it's true. Actually, I'm thinking about it seems a strange thing, but it was
always half-rooted in the truth. But
I could just be making this up. So, Paul, if you're watching this, I apologize. And maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe it was completely made up. But even if it was made up, it was a useful, transformative thing for me, even though it didn't actually work out for me there. And the story is this, which is that I think I'd been there for maybe 18 months at this point.
Yeah.
And my first year there, I did okay, but I made all my money in the entire year in the last 2 weeks of the year. So I'd spend a whole year there just going, oh, why can't I do this anymore? What's wrong with me? And then the next year started more or less the same. So I think at one point, Paul or maybe someone else, could have been Paul, could have been someone else, pulled me aside and said, what can we, what's going on? Can you help? And the story I remember, which could be completely made up, was Paul saying, let me show you my lucky rock. I'm like, your lucky rock?
Oh no, dude.
So
have you seen the Trader movie?
Yeah.
When he goes get the lucky shoes?
Yep. So the lucky rock. So the lucky rock, as I remember it, was like a pet rock that a child had drawn a smiley face on. And he's like, so let me tell you the story of this. And he's like, so, a couple of years ago, he's like, I was having a tough time like you are now. And I went home and my daughter noticed that I was a bit down on myself. So she said, Dad, I won't try and do Paul's accent, but, Daddy, what's wrong? And he said, oh, honey, I'm just having a tough time. And so the next day he comes home and his daughter says, here's your, he said, I'm having a tough time on doing stupid things.
Yeah.
And so the next day he comes home and his daughter presents him with this rock and says, next time you're about to do something stupid, look at the rock, think of me, and don't do it. And why that was such a transformative story, if it indeed ever happened, for me, was that I always assumed at that point that, especially, this is Paul Tudor Jones at that point, he's probably 50 years old, which is my age now.
Yep.
Probably, already.
What year is this?
I guess 2004, maybe.
Yeah, he was 50.
So, this is a guy who's, the pinnacle, in every way. Yep. And I always
4 and 40 were the return. Like that was
right. So I always sort of assumed when it came to investing and risk taking that you'd sort of, I guess I'd been doing it at that point for 8, professionally for 8 years. And I just assumed you'd get to a point where, all the stupid crap you do, all the sort of the battles you have with self-control and all those sort of things, and discipline and patience and all those things that you, as an investor, you're constantly fighting, eventually just become second nature. It'd be like riding a bike, for example.
Yeah.
And that story, again, if it did actually happen, was just such a transformative thing for me. Because I'm like, holy shit, here's a guy who's like as good as it's, Hall of Fame good.
He's got his
and
good luck rock.
Fucking lucky rock. Like, so that really did, that it didn't help me actually at Tudor at the end, but it helped me enormously going forward, because I realized that it's always going to be a struggle. There's never a moment where you wake up and go, oh, this is easy. It's always hard, but you got to just do it anyway.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.